Well, it's a very interesting question. The answer is really nobody knows, Rita, because the Labour Party, the leadership, has been fantastically good in recent months of not telling us really anything that it's planning to do.
Keir Starmer's leadership is crumbling, and Douglas Murray isn't holding back. In one of his most blistering critiques yet, Murray has ripped into Starmer, calling him the worst prime minister the UK has ever seen. From failing to control mass immigration to standing by as anti-immigration riots erupt, Murray paints a picture of a leader completely out of touch with the people he's supposed to serve. With a country on edge and frustration boiling over, is Starmer really the leader Britain needs right now?
Forcing immigration onto these areas, and you do nothing to improve the lot in these areas. Of course, nobody should be on the streets. The unbelievable hooliganism and thuggery of recent days should repel everybody.
When it comes to immigration, Douglas Murray doesn't hold back in his critique of Keir Starmer. According to Murray, Starmer has completely missed the mark on one of the most divisive issues facing the UK today. Immigration has been a hot-button topic in Britain for years. It's a balancing act. On one side, there's the need for a strong workforce, which often means welcoming immigrants. On the other, there are real concerns about cultural shifts, social pressures, and economic strain that immigration can bring. Murray believes that Starmer has not only failed to strike this balance, but has essentially sidestepped the issue altogether.
What will you do with illegal migrants who come to our country? What will you do with them? It's a simple question.
His plan is
what will you do with them?
They need to be processed at the moment.
Processed?
They're not.
Murray points out that Starmer's approach to immigration has been frustratingly vague and non-committal. It's as if the Prime Minister is tiptoeing around the issue, refusing to take a firm stand. Murray argues that Starmer's unwillingness to provide clear answers or a concrete plan has left many British voters feeling abandoned. People are concerned about how immigration is affecting their communities, but instead of getting a strong leader who's willing to tackle the issue head-on, they're left with a prime minister who seems more interested in avoiding controversy.
Do you understand the optics of it when you are the prime minister that said you were going to do politics differently? It looks like you're claiming loads of freebies.
Well,
do you get it? Even if you don't agree with it?
I've given you my explanation, and I can't improve on that.
This lack of leadership has, in Murray's eyes, only made the situation worse. For years, immigration has been a point of contention in the UK, and many people have been looking for decisive action. But instead of offering solutions, Starmer has given vague promises and political platitudes. This indecision has only fueled public frustration, making it seem as though the government is out of touch with the everyday concerns of its citizens.
Violent clashes have gripped parts of the UK in recent days as protests fueled by anti-immigrant sentiment rage across communities.
Douglas Murray doesn't just stop at criticizing Keir Starmer's handling of immigration. He goes further, drawing a direct line between Starmer's weak leadership and the anti-immigration riots that have erupted in parts of the UK. According to Murray, Starmer's reluctance to take a firm stand on immigration has left a leadership vacuum, one that has allowed frustration and anger to boil over. For many people, immigration has been a sore point for years, and they feel like their concerns are constantly ignored. Murray believes Starmer's indecisiveness has only made things worse, pushing people to the streets in protest.
At a Taylor Swift-themed dance party in the town of Southport, and the sense clearly in the immediate aftermath of that, this is an observation, was that the authorities were withholding the identity of the suspect. Now, there are some reasons why they might do that, but obviously tensions locally were extremely high, feelings were extremely high, and the way to try to control the information obviously completely backfired, as you would expect it to. And that's led to these riots across city after city in the UK. It's extremely disturbing. These riots of themselves provoked counter riots where identifiably Muslim young men, some armed, have been also shown on camera attacking people in the streets. And this is really just a completely appalling, and I'm sorry to say this, completely predictable situation. Indeed, I can say it's predictable because I said exactly this sort of thing would start happening 7 years ago or so in my book, The Strange Death of Europe. It's horrible to be proved right in such circumstances because you don't want to be proved right about something like this. You want people to listen and change their policies. But, you know, the last few days have shown the Labour government refusing to concede that there is anything other than what they call far-right violence going on. They claim that there isn't a two-tier policing system in the UK, which everybody with their own eyes can see is not the case. Clearly, there is a two-tier policing system in the UK. These areas where this has happened in, what's more, are all areas where there were riots in 2011. And as I write in The Spectator this week, one of the interesting things about that is that all of these areas are, among other things, areas where migration has continued to increase and joblessness has gone up.
Murray argues that these riots are not just spontaneous outbursts of anger. They are the result of years of pent-up frustration. People feel abandoned by a government that seems unwilling to engage with their legitimate concerns about immigration. In Murray's view, Starmer's leadership has failed to provide clear answers or direction, leaving the public with no real sense that the government is even listening. This has created a situation where people feel that their only option is to protest, even if it leads to violence and unrest.
I think we have to start saying very clearly, if you don't like it here, go. And if you don't like it here and you intend to make it worse, we will make you go.
What makes Murray's analysis especially sharp is how he frames Starmer's failure as not just a political misstep, but a serious failure of leadership. By refusing to address the immigration issue head-on, Starmer has, in Murray's eyes, allowed anger to fester unchecked. The riots, in this context, are not just about immigration. They are about a deeper sense of betrayal. People feel like they have been left behind by a political system that cares more about maintaining the status quo than about addressing the real issues affecting everyday life.
What have they actually done in all of these years? Absolutely nothing. And it'll be the same with this. They'll lock some people up, and they will demonize all sorts of people, and they'll cover for others, but they will do nothing to address this.
Douglas Murray's criticism of Keir Starmer goes well beyond immigration. He paints a picture of a leader who is stuck in indecision, unable or unwilling to make the tough calls that come with running a country. For Murray, Starmer's approach to leadership is marked by inaction, with a tendency to avoid hard choices because he's more worried about political backlash than addressing real issues. It's a leadership style that, according to Murray, has left the country drifting without a clear direction. One of the biggest problems Murray sees in Starmer is his reluctance to take risks. Instead of stepping up and making firm decisions on the pressing issues Britain faces, Starmer often appears more interested in playing it safe. Immigration is just one example, but Murray argues that this kind of indecision stretches across many aspects of Starmer's leadership. There's a sense that Starmer is always waiting for the right moment, afraid to rock the boat or alienate key groups. This hesitancy, in Murray's view, is what's driving the deeper problems the country faces. What's even more concerning, according to Murray, is the disconnect between Starmer and the everyday people of Britain. Starmer might try to project an image of stability and competence, but many feel like he's out of touch with the real concerns of ordinary Britons. Whether it's about immigration, the economy, or social issues, there's a growing perception that Starmer doesn't understand or relate to the frustrations that are building up across the country. Murray points to this as a fundamental flaw in his leadership, arguing that it's one thing to be cautious, but it's another to completely ignore the pulse of the people you're supposed to represent. Douglas Murray doesn't shy away from calling out what he sees as political cowardice in Keir Starmer's leadership. According to Murray, Starmer is so afraid of alienating the progressive wing of his party that he's become paralyzed, unable to take a strong stance on the issues that really matter. Murray believes that this fear of upsetting his base, particularly on contentious topics like immigration, is what's preventing Starmer from leading effectively. Instead of making tough, sometimes unpopular decisions, Starmer is choosing the safe route, staying vague, avoiding controversy, and hoping that no one notices. This hesitation, according to Murray, is exactly what's allowing populist movements to gain ground. By refusing to confront difficult issues head-on, Starmer is creating a void in leadership. And when people feel like their leaders aren't addressing their concerns, they turn to more extreme voices, those who aren't afraid to say what the mainstream won't. Murray sees this as a direct consequence of Starmer's failure to lead. The rise of populism, in his view, isn't just about economic frustration or social division, it's about a lack of real leadership at the top. And Starmer, in Murray's opinion, is the embodiment of that failure. Douglas Murray believes that mass immigration has had a profound and unsettling effect on British society. According to him, the scale of immigration over recent years has brought about significant cultural changes, leaving many people feeling like their communities are no longer recognizable. There's a sense of displacement, as if the very fabric of British identity is being altered in ways that are difficult to navigate. Murray doesn't argue that immigration itself is inherently bad, but he's concerned that the speed and volume of immigration have made it harder for British society to absorb these changes without strain. Murray is particularly critical of Keir Starmer's apparent failure to acknowledge the social and cultural consequences of mass immigration. He argues that Starmer has been more focused on avoiding controversy than addressing the genuine concerns of the British public. People are seeing their neighborhoods change, their schools and public services stretched thin, and they feel like no one in government is taking these issues seriously. According to Murray, this is where Starmer is missing the mark. It's not just about the economic impacts of immigration. It's about the cultural shifts that are making people feel uncertain about their place in their own country. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.